A Himalayan expedition is a tremendous experience for all those who take part. When we go on such an expedition, we live much the same as you would on a camping trip. Nepal is one of the more remote areas of Asia that hasn't had the opportunity to keep pace with the modern world. The mountains of the Khumbu area can only be reached by walking for 170 miles. An expedition is made up in Kathmandu, the last touch with civilization as we know it. More in length. A typical day's march starts with early morning tea. The country is rugged and beautiful, and there's always something to see. Terraced rice paddies, broad valleys, beautiful flowers, and magnificent mountains. And we pass monasteries with their many prayer flags fluttering in the breeze. It is the belief of these people that each time the flag waves, their prayer is repeated. About 10 o'clock, time is taken out for breakfast. This part of our camping isn't quite like ordinary family camping because, you see, the Sherpas look after us Saabs rather well. After breakfast, we continue the march. Each man sets his own pace according to the load he carries. From high up on the track, we can see the thin thread of the suspension bridge below, which our porters are crossing. These chains are forged locally in small villages. The suspension of these bridges is not always reliable, so it's wise to keep one hand on the chain. A little invocation to your deity doesn't hurt either. But there are still those who prefer to ford the stream and climb back up the hill to the trail. Often the narrow trail clings to the side of the mountain. The march continues until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when camp is set up for the night. In no time, the tents are pitched and we can relax for the rest of the evening. About 17 days later, we arrive at the village of Kumjung to be greeted by old friends. This school that we helped build at Kumjung was the first school in this part of the Himalayas. During its first 2 years, it seems to have met a basic need of the villagers, and the parents and pupils gave us a wonderful welcome. One of the main projects of this trip was to pipe a supply of fresh water to Kumjung village, so we made our first base of operations here. The women of Kumjung had always carried water from its source a mile above the village. Their loads weighed 80 to 90 pounds. This new pipe of ours was going to make a great difference to them. Murray Ellis, our engineer, was in charge. He concentrated on getting a consistent fall so that the water would flow evenly. Since this area is so remote, the Sherpas used methods much the same as those used by Americans a century ago. Everything is done by hand, or with the help of simple hand tools. The villagers donated all their time and energy to this community project. We supplied the materials, the know-how. Finally, the water gushed out at the bottom. Now, water was available right in the village. The tarpaulin was later replaced with a permanent cement pool. The women were quick to take advantage of the ample water supply. After the building of the first schoolhouse at Kumjung, we'd received several requests from other villages in the area to help them do the same. One of these letters read, "Please give us a school like Kumjung. Our children have eyes, and yet they are blind." On this trip, we were committed to building 2 schools. One of them was at Pangboche, within sight of Mount Everest. The contribution of the villagers was their labour, because this was their school and they were prepared to work for it. However, we paid the artisans like this stonemason. They were very expert at fitting the stones together without cement to form the wall. The school quickly began to take shape. All the timber had to be carried up from the forests down below and pit sawn into the correct size. These fellows are real craftsmen. Everything is cut and squared on the spot. Mass production hasn't yet reached the Khumbu area. In these schools, we try to maintain the better features of local architecture. A snowfall each afternoon was the usual weather pattern. But the work went on regardless. However, the mornings were usually fine. Once the rock walls were completed, the expedition members were kept very busy on the framework and the roofing. The roof was finished with aluminum sheeting and with fiberglass panels as skylights. Since there's no electricity, we have to use the daylight for interior lighting. Few schools can have so spectacular a location as this one at Pangboche, 13,500 feet above sea level. All during the expedition, doctors like Phil Horton were treating the local people. Their work was aggravated by a smallpox epidemic. We had some vaccine airdropped to us and vaccinated over 7,000 Sherpas. We built the second school at the village of Tami, a mere 12 miles from the Tibetan border. And as with all the schools, the head lama of Pangboche performed the dedication ceremony. By this time, several wives of expedition members had walked 170 miles to join us, and they too were present for the dedication. All the villagers took advantage of the head lama's visit to receive his blessing, as did the expedition members. Then, with the raising of the flag and the singing of the national anthem, my wife Louise was given the honor of cutting the ribbon and officially opening the school. Edmund thanked the head lama for his part in the dedication. A little more singing. A few more speeches. And the traditional exchanging of scarves, which is the Sherpa way of expressing honor and respect. And then the serious business of enrolling students. Their parents signed the register with their thumbprints. The children at Tami looked much scruffier than those from Kumjung, who'd already had 2 years at school. Kumjung celebrated the second anniversary of its school with a sports day, the first sports day that had ever been held in the Khumbu area. There were traditional contests that are familiar to us, but everything was fresh and new to the Sherpas. The Saabs took part in the senior competition. There was a special contest for the girls. And one for the smaller children. I must say the parents thoroughly enjoyed this one. There were several tug-of-war contests, some between the Sherpas and another between the Sherpas and the Saabs. Needless to say, the Sherpas won. Perhaps they had more fresh replacements. The obstacle race was great fun. Desmond Doig had managed to scrape together enough material to set up quite a course. And it was very interesting to see how some of the boys reacted to new situations. Of course, we couldn't have a sports day in the Himalayas without having some sort of a climbing contest. On the whole, the sports day was a great success, and I have no doubt that the boys are practicing up on their skills in preparation for the second annual sports day. During the building of the school at Pangbochi, some of the party could be spared for a try at climbing Tawechi. This virgin peak is 21,420 feet high. Base camp was established at 17,000 feet, and preparations were made for the climb. For day after day, the men struggled with the technical difficulties of the great rock and snow face. And as the route was established, loads of equipment and food were carried up. Carrying loads at this altitude is mighty hard work. Camp 1 was set up at 18,000 feet under an overhanging boulder to protect the tents from rockfall. In climbing a mountain, it's not a case of just starting at the bottom and going on up to the top. It's a long, tedious process of covering a short distance at a time. Working back and forth, fixing ropes up over the more difficult and dangerous spots. That's Mike Gill driving in a piton. He did most of the camera work on this expedition and as well did a full share of the climbing. You have to be careful when there's a couple of thousand feet of nothing under the seat of your pants. Once the route is established, the heavier equipment can be moved to the location of the next camp. Climbing was now even steeper and more exposed, and the loads weighed like a ton. Two rock steps were too steep to climb direct. These were tamed with long wire ladders. At 20,000 feet, man's efficiency is reduced about 50%. Any effort at all, even that of breathing, is difficult. After 3 weeks of mighty hard work, the assault camp was established on the snow plateau at 20,000 feet. Camp 2 is here, and the route follows the prominent ridge in the center of the face. And it's steep, terribly steep. Conscious of the fact that a slip could be fatal, the men hacked their way up the ice face. The ice chips peppered the men below, adding to their discomfort. The last few hundred feet up onto the summit ridge was almost vertical, and this took a long, long time. The summit was only a short distance away, but the final 100 feet looked pretty rough. After a brief pause to get back their breath, they moved along the ridge. The ridge narrows into a contorted crest of delicately balanced snow. To venture along it would bring certain disaster. And so, 200 feet from the summit, on a little crest, they plant their prayer flags. Men believe that as these flags wave in the winds of this high place, they will placate the grim deities of Tawechi.